And we're live. Hello, everyone. So my name is Kinsey Dodds, and I am here joined by Loyal and Jamie from Screener.io. And they've got an interesting project that they wanted to show me, and I wanted to show everyone else. So yeah, we're just going to be chatting about that. So you all can take it away, and we can learn from you.
Great. Thanks so much, Ken. So like what I was hoping to do today was to start off with a quick demo of Screener, and kind of explain kind of what it is and why we exist and what kind of problems we're trying to tackle that can hopefully help other React developers out there as well. So I'm just going to share my screen now. Are you guys able to see a Screener logo?
Yep.
Great. So like my agenda to start with is basically just to start off with a short presentation, and then I'm going to go through a demo of the product, and then we can just chat afterwards about it with any questions you might have.
Yep.
So yeah, as you know, we're a company called Screener, and our company focuses on automating visual testing for React developers. And so we exist to simplify UI testing for front-end developers. And the reason we find this really important is because that there's been just a major shift in development over the last 5 years, in that more and more application code and in turn more and more complexity has been moving to the front end. And so this has just made it more and more important to effectively test all this front end code. However, the problem that we saw, and we experienced ourselves, is that UI testing is very hard to do, and so we've kind of set forth to kind of tackle and solve this problem. So as you know, there's kind of a couple ways of doing UI testing. It can be done manually or with some form of test automation. Manual testing obviously has downsides to it in that it's slow and it's tedious and it's difficult to scale, whereas automated testing is essential to move fast and not break things. But what we found is that there's several downsides to traditional test automation as well. And so one of the downsides is that it's hard to do. So it requires developers and engineering teams to kind of be bought into a culture of testing, to have processes in place and things like that, which takes a lot of time to get set up. It's also very time consuming to write code and to write tests and to maintain them as UIs change. And it creates a lot more code to maintain as well. And last but not least, there is a big gap in test coverage, even when you do have a full suite of functional tests, in that it tests the functionality, but it does not test the visual aspects of the UIs. So Screener is going to set forth to solve these problems in two major ways. As the first way we're solving it is with visual testing, which we believe is a better and more powerful way to test UIs. And we believe this is for two reasons. First of all, it can dramatically simplify testing because a single visual snapshot can cover dozens to hundreds of coded assertions. And secondly, it kind of covers areas that traditional test automation cannot cover, such as the visual aspects of the UIs. So I'm going to show you a quick example of that. So imagine if you're creating an end-to-end test against Screener itself, and you're going to the dashboard and clicking the review button. So this is the Screener dashboard, by the way. And then if we click the review button, we would get a couple states here. We would get a couple enabled buttons and a couple disabled ones. So if we were to test this page, let's say through Selenium or something like that, there'd be at least a dozen different functional expectations in order to get good coverage on this test. And there'd be a lot of other visual expectations that would also not be tested. And so as can be seen here with all these different types of expectations, there's some problems with this. Such as the tests can get quite large and complex. It takes a lot of time to write code, as well as takes a lot of time to maintain this code whenever UI changes. Everything is explicitly asserted, so it's easy to miss things in your test coverage, and obviously does not test the visual aspects of your UIs. So how Screener can solve this with visual testing is that what you can do is just add a single step, which is capture visual snapshot. And that single step can cover all these expectations you see here for functional expectations, as well as all the visual expectations. And so, as you can see, there's a lot of benefits to this. It can dramatically reduce the time to write and maintain automated tests, as well as to, at the same time, increase your test coverage and the confidence you have within your tests. The next major way in which Screener solves those automation problems is with isolated testing, which we believe is a faster, more effective way to test. And so something you probably heard of before is a testing pyramid. The reason I put this here is because a lot of times when people think about UI testing, they think about end-to-end testing. But as we know from the testing pyramid, most tests should be unit tests, where you're getting a lot of that test coverage because it's cheaper to write and faster to run, versus end-to-end tests, which are much heavier and much slower to run. Some additional benefits of kind of unit integration testing is it can also be done much earlier in the project lifecycle. So it helps become a design activity as well as a testing activity, versus end-to-end testing, which is done quite late in the game. With UI testing, obviously a unit would be a UI component, and this can be seen in all the kind of modern front-end stacks today, such as React, Vue, and Angular 2. And with this kind of new component-driven way of thinking, a lot of tools have come out, such as Storybook. They're going to help make this development experience much nicer for developers. So many developers probably already know what Storybook is, so I won't spend too much time talking about it. But for those who don't, it's an environment to develop components in isolation, and at the same time, you kind of get living documentation library that can be shared across teams. So Screener basically takes these two big ideas that I just mentioned, visual testing and isolated testing, and it combines them into something that we want to introduce that's called visual component testing. And this provides a way for teams to automatically get visual and functional test coverage across the React components without needing to write tests. And how this works is Screener will basically integrate with different component libraries, such as Storybook. And so you develop your components and document your components using something like Storybook, and document the different scenarios of your UI components. And then Screener will use these different component scenarios as visual test cases for test automation. And so essentially, developers just need to write docs, and then they will get automated UI tests with Screener. And then I'll show you a quick demo of this. So what I'm showing you right now, this is a React Storybook, actually for Screener. For those who are familiar, on the left-hand side, this is all the components we have within Screener. And then here we listed all the different scenarios for each component. And so for this component, for example, we have a loading scenario, and we have an error state, and a loaded state, and an empty state. And so what Screener will do is it will crawl this list of components and each of the different states for each component, and it will pull them into Screener. It'll take a snapshot of this frame, take a visual snapshot of it, and then Screener will do a visual comparison of it within our cloud. So I'll just show you an example of that. So what I'm showing right now, this is the Screener dashboard. And so it's meant to kind of look and feel similar to a CI tool. So on the left-hand side, we have kind of the recent builds that we run against the different repositories we have. And it can show you really quickly kind of what builds have passed or failed. The one that's selected right now is a failed build, because Screener has found 2 visual regressions out of 187 UI states. So from here, there's a couple of things you can do. You can actually view all the states. And when you do that, you can click into any one of them, and Screener will show you kind of a baseline version of that visual state, as well as the latest version on the right-hand side. And all the states are named according to Storybook. So it starts with the component name, and then it ends with the name of the story, or the name of that component state. As you can see, with all these different states, most of them are kind of highlighted as accepted in green. What that means is that Screener did not find any visual regressions since the last time this test was run. But when we go back to the dashboard, there's a big review button here, which filters these states to only the ones that have changed. And so when I go into one of these, you can see that this state has changed. And what Screener has done is it's actually added visual highlights showing exactly what the changes are. And so Screener has shown that there is a new cancel build button, which shows up in green because it's a newly inserted item. And we also have a text change here from 2x to 1x parallelism. What Screener also does is it provides a lot of additional details. And so when you click on any of these highlights, you can see that Screener automatically categorizes your changes into 4 types of categories, 3 of which are shown here. And so Screener will categorize things into structural changes, layout changes, and content changes. We also have a style category as well, which will show differences, property differences in CSS. And it provides us additional details for each of these. So here we actually do a text diff on this particular change, showing that the text 1x has been added and the text 2x has been removed. In this case, these changes are kind of expected new functionality. And so in order to set a new baseline, all we have to do is accept this within Screener. Once this is accepted, this latest version will be used as a baseline for any tests going forward. The next example I want to show is just there may sometimes be cases where there's content that is kind of expected to constantly change. And so what you can do is you can easily ignore those within Screener so that tests don't get flagged as false positives going forward. So in this case, we have a couple dates here. What we can do is we can click on them, open up our changes list, and we can easily ignore those changes. And once we ignore them, Screener sees that there's no more changes, and so it will automatically set it to accepted. So now when we go back to our dashboard, you can see that all the states have been accepted, and our build has automatically been converted to a successful build.
Hey, could I actually, with on this screen, is it possible for me to look at the ones that you accepted? Like, let me see the ones that were different in this build. Is that possible?
Oh, you mean after being accepted?
Correct. Yeah.
No, not currently, but yeah, that's a good. That sounds like it would be a useful feature.
Yeah, totally. It would be nice to be able to say, hey, like we changed the baseline at some point, but that baseline was wrong, or maybe you have some sort of review process or something where one person reviews them and then a second person needs to review or something like that.
Right.
That would be useful. But this is super cool. I haven't interrupted you because I didn't want to derail your presentation, but just know that I'm watching this and I'm thinking this is amazing.
Okay, thank you.
You can keep going.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, like to add to the point you just made, one feature we're planning on adding is actually displaying a list of which users accepted what, and so like in that list, we can also kind of show which exact states they accepted, so that someone can go back and look at changes.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And so yeah, like just to kind of finish off my presentation, I'll just reiterate some of the major features. Obviously, Screener provides visual component testing, interaction testing, and we render things in real browsers and devices, and so you can get responsive design testing and cross-browser testing as well. Screener automatically parallelizes the tests in our cloud so that you get fast feedback. And if you do have Storybook stories already set up within your project, then installation is very simple. It's just a 1-minute install to install our npm package, and then it'll just run. It's also one-line CI integration to integrate into any kind of CI tool, and it can be run across environments locally or in CI. So that at the end of the day, teams can spend less time automating UI tests while improving their test coverage, so that developers can focus on project code, not on writing test code, and be confident when making code changes and deploying them into production. And yeah, that's it.
Awesome, cool. Yeah, so I do have some questions. So toward the beginning, you talked about being able to integrate with other like technologies, not just React. So is this specific to React Storybook, or can I use other tools with Screener?
Yeah, so currently the easiest, what we're planning on doing is having kind of different drivers, I guess you can call them, that can kind of suck in data from other types of component libraries. So like another one we're looking at is one called Vue Play for Vue.js. And I think Angular 2 has one as well called Component Lab. And like as time goes on, we're definitely planning on adding more. But like what we also have is we have This is our GitHub. We also have a GitHub repo called Screener Runner, which is kind of a generic version of Screener for people that don't have Storybook but still want to test their components in this way. Then what they can do is they can simply provide a list of URLs to their components, and like then Screener can perform visual testing on that as well.
Oh yeah, that's totally that works perfectly, because then you could make like query parameters for that URL or something. Your server just send up a specific state. Yeah. So exactly. I remember there was a couple of years ago, I remember hearing about a tool called Huxley, I think, from Facebook. Are you familiar with that tool?
Yeah. I've seen Huxley before.
So can you describe a little bit for people what Huxley was and how this is different?
Right. So from what I recall, Huxley is also kind of a visual testing tool. And Huxley will also kind of take screenshots of application pages and then kind of do a visual comparison on them. Apart from that, like I haven't actually used Huxley, so I'm not sure how much it did. So like how Screener, I guess, differentiates is that it really simplifies that whole process without having to set up a bunch of different tools, as well as set up browsers, as well as set up all these different things in order to run your tests. We kind of simplify that whole process and provide that for you. Where Screener also differentiates is how we perform our visual diffs. And there are probably some other ones as well out there, other open source tools to do this, but most of them will basically take a screenshot and compare image to image. And what happens is a lot of times you get a lot of false positives because like something might be a few pixels off, or there might be anti-aliasing problems in the text and things like that. So what Screener does is Screener basically looks at screenshots from two different perspectives. Screener basically pulls down the DOM, as well as Screener takes a screenshot. Once Screener kind of understands the DOM, there's a lot of additional things Screener can do, such as it can do smart ignores. So for example, if you want to ignore all changes in the page, it can do that. Screener can also kind of segment a page. So for example, if you have a really long page where some data might change and it pushes data down, then typically what other tools will do is they'll kind of highlight everything below it because everything has shifted. Screener doesn't do that. So Screener will kind of segment the page into, like, let's say 100 different areas, and then it'll perform a visual diff on all those different areas. So it reduces a lot of the visual noise, and it allows us to really target what has really changed rather than kind of treating it as one huge page. And in addition to that, it also gives us a lot of additional details so that we're able to kind of break out diffs into different categories, such as layout and styling and content and things like that, giving a lot more detail to developers to help them to debug any visual regressions they find.
Cool. Yeah, it sounds like Screener is much more like fully featured than most of the tools that I've seen, and like my biggest concern with visual regression tools is how finicky they are, and address lots of those problems with including the DOM in your screenshot, or like that context, which is really quite amazing. So there's a chat going on the YouTube page right now, and somebody on the Storybook team just mentioned to me that they are actually working on supporting other frameworks other than React. So
perfect.
Might not even need to support anything but Storybook. But
right. Yeah, that sounds great.
So cool. Yeah, I had a couple other questions. So how does this integrate with my workflow? Let's like on my team, I'm using GitHub Enterprise, self-hosted. But for lots of my open source stuff, I use GitHub naturally, and I do have some projects, or at least one project in particular, I'm working on with a team of folks. We're working on the Glamorous website right now, and I could see this being pretty valuable for that. So what is the workflow integration story with Screener right now?
Sure. So like I'll like first kind of walk through, I guess, what the install process would be, and like then like how we can integrate with like things like GitHub and things like that. So to install Screener, it's actually pretty simple. We have a wizard here, and like so imagine you're adding a repo name, and then you add whatever Storybook options that you might have that are specific to your project. And then what we do is we generate a configuration file, which can get committed into your GitHub repo. And this API key you would probably change to invariant variable. Then you would install our package, our npm package, and then you can add the script to your package.json. And then once that's in there, you would just simply run this script, and this script can like then it'll kick off a test. It'll connect to your Storybook. It'll pull in all that data, and like then it'll start running a visual test. Once that's running, this line can also be integrated into your CI script, and like then you can then just start kicking off kind of continuous visual testing through your CI tool. We also just recently launched a new feature for GitHub. So I'll just quickly show that. So we have GitHub PR integration. So like what can happen is that Screener will just show up as another status within your PR, and whenever things either fail or are accepted, the status will automatically update for that.
Yeah, perfect. So as far as like getting Storybook to run on, or I guess it'd be Screener to run on Travis CI, for example, I have to make sure that I like have Chrome on my CI service. You're not going to actually run things for me. It needs to be run on.
Sorry. Yes, we are actually going to run things for you.
What? That's awesome.
Yeah. So like we have a grid of browsers within our cloud. So all you have to do is add this line, and then what will happen is Screener will kind of launch it'll launch Storybook in the background, and then Screener will automatically create a tunnel to our cloud so that we have access to your local host.
Oh my goodness, that's amazing!
And like then Screener will launch Chrome. It'll launch in parallel, like 8x parallel, and like then it'll run the tests, and like then it'll shut itself down.
Oh, that's so awesome. So could I I can run Chrome. What other browsers do you support right now?
So Screener out of the box supports only Chrome, but like we recently released integration. Let's see, where do I have it? We recently released integration with Sauce Labs.
That is exactly what I wanted to hear.
Yeah. So basically, we support all these different browsers out of Sauce Labs right now, and all you have to do is just update your configuration with the different browsers and versions from Sauce, and then Screener will automatically kick that off in Sauce, and run the tests, and then automatically shut them down afterwards.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so at first I was thinking, I don't know if I'll be able to do this, but my team is using Sauce Labs, and I think we might be able to do this, which makes me very excited. That's awesome.
Awesome.
Super cool. Okay. So what are some scenarios where, so you mentioned the testing pyramid, and and I'm definitely a believer in that testing pyramid. Where do you sit? Do you see yourself sitting kind of, you're definitely not the end to end. You're not, and maybe your integration, or where do you see yourself sitting on that pyramid?
Right. So the whole thing. So like I mean, I think most of the time the easiest tests are going to be the unit tests, and so like Screener can be used as kind of the visual unit tests for anything visual. So like for all your visual components. Excuse me. So as long as you kind of break out all the different visual scenarios that a component could be in using something like Storybook, then Screener can kind of give you coverage across across all your components. On an integration testing front, let me see if I have an example. We use Screener for integration testing as well as end-to-end testing. And so, for example, in our Storybook, we have we use Redux, and so we basically just drop our entire container into Storybook. And like then what we do is we will use fetch mock to basically mock our API calls, so that our test is basically testing the front end only, not the back end. Then what we do with Screener is we like tell Screener to basically interact with the story. And so what Screener will do in this case is it'll click the review button, it will click on a state name, it will accept things, and it'll basically perform all these actions.
What you can interact with that too, like Screener is able to do
yeah. So here, let me show you. So like this is a story, and what we've done is we've wrapped the story with a Screener tag, which has something called steps. And
goodness.
And we have these steps here, which allow you to kind of hover and click and fill out form fields and all these different things. And then once you get your component into a particular state, you can then take a snapshot based on a certain name, and the Screener will take a snapshot and do a comparison.
Wow, that's awesome. Okay, so I highly recommend people use a tool called Cypress for end-to-end testing. It's really, really incredible, but it does come up with a couple trade-offs. But I could see that, yeah, now things are getting a little bit more fuzzy for me with what I do. I think that Cypress is probably a little bit more powerful of a tool. You can do a lot more with it,
Right.
despite some of the trade-offs. But this, like as far as visual regression testing goes, I just can't think of anything that I'd want more than Screener. This is awesome.
Thank you. That's
great. Okay, so I had a couple other questions. Yeah, so what are some things that you, actually just one other thing that I wanted to mention. So this is kind of like, so back in the day we had visual regression testing with like kind of cobbled together tools, and it was really it was finicky and really hard to set up, and you've made that so much easier. But between then and now, Jest, the testing framework, created Snapshot Testing, which is kind of like a middle ground. Like you can't actually see what it actually looks like, but you can see what the DOM would look like, and you can do actually a lot of other really cool things with Snapshot testing too. And so now my question is, okay, now that I have visual regression testing that has been like dramatically simplified, and it just plugs into my workflow so well because Storybook is amazing. So basically I get tests naturally out of just my natural development, which I think is the dream.
Yeah.
So I have that, but are there scenarios where you could see doing regular snapshot testing or even just other assertions with a testing framework like Jest, or would you throw away all of your unit tests and just go full on visual regression for all the visual stuff?
Yeah. So what we've done, and what we've recommended to like our users so far is that like we still use Jest to do kind of all our non-visual testing. So like we still have we use Redux, and so we have tests for our reducers and actions, and like that's just all coded. But for our components, as long as we have kind of written them all out, like basically shown all the different scenarios that a component could be in Storybook, then like we've been really happy with that, and we haven't needed to kind of do anything in addition. One thing that I found recently, which I thought was really interesting, is something called it's called Jest Storybook Facade. Have you heard that?
No, I haven't.
It basically allows you to write code that is basically just a Jest test. And like if you return the component, then that component will show up in Storybook. So basically, it gets rid of the Storybook API, and everything is written as a describe it block. And like so, if you want Jest and like a specifically coded assertion, then you're able to do that. And if not, you can like just get your Storybook stories directly out of Jest.
That's really interesting. So in that scenario, you could do both Jest assertions as well as just return the component, and then we'll take a visual snapshot of that too.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of best of both worlds without duplicating your code. And in addition to that, you get code coverage, and so it's pretty cool.
Oh yeah, that's true. I hadn't thought about that, but it would be, you probably don't have any, I can't think of any tool right now that could get code coverage for my Storybook. Not that couldn't be created, but yeah, probably is not. Yeah.
Yeah. So like we were able to get code coverage, using that Jest Storybook Facade package.
Yeah, that's cool. That's really cool. Yeah, because that's one of the big things that you give up when you go with end-to-end testing or visual regression testing in this case.
Right.
Is you lose that code coverage. But if you can get both, and in addition, you can also do more fine-grained assertions, that's pretty legit. So, I've got all kinds of things I need to think about then. So with the GitHub integration, does that work with GitHub Enterprise? I've never really done many integrations with GitHub Enterprise before, so I'm not too familiar.
Right. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I haven't tried testing it on a non-public repo. Or sorry, like not public, but like in non, but like GitHub Enterprise is on premise, right?
Yeah. So you mean like a cloud, a GitHub cloud
right.
hosted thing? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll have to look into that. If that is not possible, is there any other way I could use Screener? That like I wouldn't be able to use like Screener.io, but can I benefit still from any part of Screener even if I can't use Screener.io?
So like even if you can't integrate into GitHub, Screener can still work. So like GitHub integration is optional. It's purely for if you want GitHub PR status updates. But like if you integrate Screener into your CI, even if it's all on premise and all that kind of stuff, what Screener can do is it can either pass or fail your CI build based on visual regressions found.
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. So that makes me think of another question though. Is there any so with Cypress, they're building like a dashboard thing that you can go log in and you see all your test runs, kind of like what you showed us with Screener.
Okay.
But in addition to that, you can also have Cypress just run locally or on CI and not actually report anything or anything like that. So with Screener, could I do something similar? Get some instead of like reporting the test results to Screener.io, I could have it like get all the files output and put it somewhere myself, or is it pretty much have to use the service?
Currently, you have to use the service. Like it does output information into your CI build, such as the number of visual regressions, and like then it'll have a link back for reviewing within Screener. But yeah, we like do plan to have kind of other reporting capabilities that will probably show a bit more fine-grained kind of results, as well as maybe even kind of you can download the screenshots and things like that.
Cool. Yeah, that sounds great.
Awesome.
So somebody in the chat asked whether you've tried Hapo. I've never heard of Hapo, but curious about what Hapo is.
Hapo? No, I have not.
Okay. Yeah, well, that's something to look up later.
Yeah.
So what about pricing? I haven't looked at the pricing page, but is this one of those open source is free and then like number of projects or tests run or something like that?
Yeah. So this product is currently kind of in beta, and so we haven't released our pricing yet. But it will be a kind of a subscription based kind of SaaS model where people will pay for kind of two things. Like we'll have different plans that will be based on the number of parallelism, so how fast you want the test to run, as well as the number of visual snapshots taken per month. So we'll have a plan with like 20,000 a month or something like that.
Okay. So what about if I'm running these tests on Sauce Labs instead of Screener? Does that impact pricing at all?
No. So like, yeah, like the pricing would be the same. Um, uh, because it would still depend on kind of the frequency of the test runs and how many visual snapshots you take. And so if you take them, whether using our browsers or using Sauce Labs browsers, that's essentially what the plans are covering.
Okay, cool. And sorry, maybe I missed it, but did you say anything about the open source plan? Would there be like an open source is free kind of plan or anything like that?
Yeah, there probably will be. We like probably not immediately, but like we like definitely want to have like an open source plan as well as maybe like a startup plan going forward. Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Sweet. So as far as like right now, is it you have early access? So yeah, if somebody wanted to get started with it, is that the best way to go about it?
Yeah, just to sign up for early access, and like we'll be in touch, and like we'll get you started soon, and try the tool.
Okay, cool. So yeah, early access, and I'm guessing since you haven't released pricing yet, I'm guessing that's early access is free.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, it's
Okay.
free right now. Yeah.
Sweet. Maybe I'll have to try that. Try this out on something.
Yeah, sounds
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, this is really cool. I'm really impressed.
Thank you.
Actually I tried and failed a couple months ago, almost a year ago now, to get convince my coworkers that Storybook would be a good idea. But if I have Screener in addition, I think they'd probably be like, "Oh, snap." We'll see. I bet if I brought it up again, they'd probably jump on board with Storybook. It was mostly just like a I did a really bad job explaining what Storybook was. So,
is there like another tool that you guys use? Like,
no, we use Command R. It is
nice.
the worst because it's not a single page app exactly. Like it mostly is, but it's server rendered. So every time you hit refresh, it has to go back to the server, get all the data.
Right.
It is a very slow workflow, and
Right.
so I expect that we'll be able to speed things up. And we'll probably I just haven't taken the time to convince them to or talk with them about Storybook yet, but I will, and hopefully we'll be able to try out Screener.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Cool stuff. Awesome. Is there anything else that we didn't talk about that you wanted to bring up?
Not that I can think of. We went through quite a bit of content.
Good. Cool.
Yeah.
I hope this is helpful for you when you're trying to share the Screener love throughout the world.
Definitely.
And I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you very much. Take care. Thanks.
Okay. Bye.